Welcome back to the Moderately Educated News Network, guys. I'm here with my awesome co-host, Xavier Dukes. Today, we are going to be going over the debate, who we think won and why, and what it means for the presidential election in November. So I'll go ahead and pass it to X on his thoughts, and if you guys have any takes, make sure to drop them down in the comments below, and we'll get back to you on those.
Yeah, thank you for that amazing introduction. So to get right into it, my initial pass of the 2024 presidential debate was that Kamala, I won't say what swept the floor with Trump, but I think it was a pretty decisive victory, leaning in her direction. I would say that on a couple of grounds. I did take notes during it. Um, I felt like Trump did not he engaged less directly with questions that were being asked. I feel like his ad hominem attacks were more direct and targeted rather than like maybe straw man or pedantic or somewhat shallow. I feel like his direct insults were a little bit more grotesque, if you will, than things that Kamala may have said. I do like the let me see, what is this? Some of the substantive claims made by both candidates. I will say, I think Trump did well on relaying his economic policy regarding tariffs and the impact that those could have on the economy. I will say that he did not answer some things regarding potential inflationary effects of tariffs, but for the most part, I think he did his best to kind of lay out an economic plan there. And then finally, um, why I would give this overall to Kamala is that he was fact checked numerous times during that debate, which for whatever reason, you could claim whether that's biased moderators or whatever you may attribute that to. Me personally, I would say that he was directly fact checked on those occasions, whereas Kamala was not because of the egregiousness of some of the statements that were made that were just easily verifiable. The one point that I immediately recognized was I think it was the West Virginia governor claim about third trimester abortions and executions after birth, which was incorrect. So other than that, I think there were issues on both sides, but overall, I would probably pass it off to Kamala. I wish she did engage a little bit more on with some of the questions directly. I feel like she had some softball questions that could have she really could have just took like super definitive stances on, but she still at times chose to kind of beat around the bush and still like pseudo answer the question, but not really. Um, and then let me see, was there anything else? And finally, what I loved about a little juxtaposition between the two debaters was that I feel like Kamala's messaging was much more positive, patriotic, and unifying, rather than and she mentioned this multiple times throughout the debate, whereas Trump was somewhat continuing his normal MO of divisive rhetoric and slander, which I don't, as she mentioned, I think the American people are tired of. So, without any further comments, I'll pass it off to you for your take on the debate.
Okay. Um, so for me, I feel like neither person really completed what they needed to do objective wise. Watching the debate, I feel like Kamala handled herself a bit better than I expected her to. Her answers felt very rehearsed, and her ad hominem attacks were uh they were either a hit or miss, right? I feel like she was able to get Trump off of his focus at times when he started talking about crowd sizes and things of that nature. So he never should have got off kilter by that. I do feel like that definitely weakens his stance in the debate, focusing on primary issues. Kamala, at the same time, I don't feel like she answered a lot of the questions that she was asked effectively. I feel like she is very dodgy and dismissive, and when Trump called her out on being for all these things that she now claims she is against, she never definitively said, like, oh, well, the reason why I changed my mind on all these things is because of blank. Like, I think she did on one thing, which may have been fracking, but as far as like everything in totality, it was kind of avoided. Um, and then also, she lied. Like, obviously, Trump evaded some questions, um, and I feel like there were some things that he definitely could have seized as moments that he just did not. He failed to capitalize. Um, but realistically, Kamala, she lied multiple times. She said he was an advocate for 2025, Project 2025. That's not true. We actually know that to be not true. Um, she said he is going to get rid of IVF. Also not true. Like, they're just things that she kept spouting out that just were not true. And the fact that she was not fact checked is kind of questionable. But there's actually some data run on ABC to see how they spoke on the candidates, and they spoke 100% favorably of Kamala leading up to this debate and 93% negatively of Trump. So I'm not particularly surprised by how it was moderated, and they didn't follow the rules of the debate with mics still being hot and stuff. So I don't know what went on at ABC, but I do feel this debate was slightly more favorable to Kamala solely because she didn't get destroyed in the way that many thought she would. She held her own, but I do feel like it also isn't good for her from the standpoint that the American people still don't know who she is, what she stands for. When you're asked multiple questions, you can only say, I was raised as a middle class, blah, 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 so many times. Like, we need actual, tangible policy details of what you're going to do, like how you mentioned Trump did with when he was mentioning tariffs and things of that nature. So I feel Trump really targeted her as like, you're there now, what are you doing now? Like, literally, we can leave the debate right now and go and get this stuff done. I feel like that was good as far as getting people to realize, like, hey, she's not powerless now, she's literally the second highest position in the land. And then as far as your comment on saying that she was more positive and unifying. I mean, that's really the Democratic MO, in my opinion, is to be about the vibes instead of about what's actually going on. People can't afford to eat, people can't afford gas, people can't afford housing, people, like, things are just overpriced. And I feel like instead of giving people answers, she really just kind of evaded and played it off and said, I have a plan for you, but didn't lay out what the plan was effectively. So I definitely feel like she missed some huge opportunities there, but Trump missed huge opportunities as well. But I did like his closing remarks at the end of the debate, and I feel like that was the strongest part of the debate for him.
Okay. Yeah, I will say I was definitely surprised once I started hearing people talk over each other to a degree. I was like, oh wow. Thought we were just supposed to have this muted. I think that in terms of moderation, I feel like the moderation was done relatively well. I think Trump consistently got away with having a hot mic and interjecting to a degree. I think he consistently fought for the last word and rebuttals where it wasn't deemed like appropriate or the moderators weren't expecting it, had to constantly kind of pull him back. Um, or from rearing his head at times. I know there was a one part during the debate where Kamala did become a little bit more fiery and did attempt to make use of the hot mic and interject. But I felt like I don't know the names of the moderators, but the woman that was moderating, she kind of did strong armor back down more so than what we saw with Trump and his So I would say the moderation was fair. I think they asked challenging questions to both people. At times, they attempted to bring candidates back to answer questions if they felt like answers weren't adequate. But yeah, overall, I agree with you that I wish I saw a little bit better answers out of both people. But at the same time, I think Kamala did okay with her tax credits and small business and relating to people. Like I know you mentioned that, it's just vibes, but I think in a time of political division, and as polarized as we are now, I do feel like there's a lot of benefit in reminding people that we are much more similar than we are different, and unifying the American people behind a common goal and vision. I think goes a long way. And personally, I mean, we can call it vibes, but I really do think that's what America needs right now. Is a sense of patriotism, a sense to be proud of your country, instead of people selling out to foreign entities and pushing propaganda, which we've recently seen in a indictment, uh, as Russia's influencing our elections more and more. So, I mean, yeah, I'd like to see people unified behind America. I think Kamala does that.
Well, my response to that is that Joe Biden ran on that same platform. He said, "Build back better. I'm gonna unite people, and I'm gonna be the great uniter." And where did that get us?
I think he did.
To financial struggles? Hold on. It was rhetorical. I'll let you respond after a while, but it's just these things, right? It doesn't matter how you feel about the country being polarized if people cannot afford to eat or cannot afford to live in general. And I think that's the biggest thing right now is that there's people who are struggling with actually living. And I feel like that's why the polls are literally showing Trump's coming back in the lead because people can't afford to live and they can't continue to live like this. It's not going to be beneficial for our country. Um, if that is the case. So, people that don't even like Trump are open to voting for him solely based off of that fact. So that's something we have to take into account as well. But overall, I would venture to say I understand I said it was just vibes, right? But with those quote unquote vibes, right? If no change comes, then you have to put how you feel aside and make the factual decision to pick the better option for the country. Because if you don't have a functioning country with happy citizens in terms of economics, then what does it matter if there's no political strife? And then, as far as political strife, you say that the Democrats are trying to be unified, but they constantly demonize Republicans, whether it's via media, so on and so forth, because typically conservatives will say they disagree with the opinions of the people, but Democrats will quite literally call Trump Hitler in like super extreme points. So I don't know how you could not acknowledge that. That's not very unifying.
Um, sure. Yeah. To go to your point about it's more about economics than it is about vibes. I think when it came to Biden, in terms of being the great unifier, I think he did a great job in passing bipartisan legislation. Um, I believe more so than Trump did, which is shows unity. And I think if you can unify people behind a common front, behind a common problem or enemy or whatever the case may be, that will ultimately lead to more substantial change, um, and allow us to move forward in a clear direction at a quicker pace. So I think unity does present is a very valuable thing that shouldn't be overlooked. And then in terms of divisive rhetoric towards the Republicans, I do feel the Republican Party has several of its members have strayed to the extreme, um, and particularly those that endorse Donald Trump. Um, Now, I won't rehash too much of that, but I do feel like people that support Donald Trump are on the extremer side. That being said, I do like that Kamala mentioned the 200 GOP representatives that have sided with her and endorsed her during this election cycle. I think that unity, again, behind that common enemy that seemingly is a criminal, undemocratic, or the plethora of slurs and things that you can spew about Donald Trump. I think there's unity behind that, and that we do need to see some normalization at some of the more extreme ends of the political spectrum. Do I think comparing people to Hitler is necessarily appropriate? Probably not, but um, yeah, yeah,
And that's the funny thing, right? It's like, look at the extremists typically on the right, because you said people that support Trump um, are more extreme, right? And you look at the extreme people on the left. Extreme people on the left will advocate defunding, burning cities down, and looting and rioting and just all this crazy stuff, tearing down statues, actual American history. I don't find that to be unifying in the least bit. Um, but yeah, I mean, I like the fact that you said both sides need to reel it in. I'd agree with any extremist being reeled into being more centrist and more thought out, um, and more informed, frankly, because I feel like a lot of people aren't informed. But the common unifier, in my opinion, right now that everybody's experiencing is the fact that they cannot afford stuff. That is unifying people, whether you believe it or not. Polls show that it is. The economy is one of the biggest issues right now,
yeah.
and people are being drawn into it. People have been begging to know what Kamala's economic plan is, and she's given some points, but hasn't necessarily given the how she's going to execute it, how she's going to get the money to do so, and what the results and repercussions of that will be. So, I just think it's interesting, you know? I enjoy hearing your perspective, though, as usual.
What has Yeah, I don't know. I think Trump's constant use of tariffs is, I don't know if he doesn't understand the effects of them, or I fail to see how that's going to help the American people in any way, shape, or form. Um, I don't agree with Kamala's tax cuts, but I could see how those would be directly beneficial to the American people. I fail to see how tariffs would be.
Well, number one, let's talk about Kamala's tax cuts really quick. So, Kamala wants to get rid of the Trump's tax cuts, right? Which automatically, if you make over $45,000, give or take, your taxes are going to go up 3% beyond that bracket. So, these magical tax cuts, I'm confused on what she means by tax cuts. When is if she's talking about the $6,000 child credit, it's like Trump's platform's literally offering, I think it's like 5,000 or 5,500 as a tax credit, and you won't have that extra 3% tacked on to your taxes, which will basically kill any raise that your company gives you. So what is Kamala's tax cut for the middle class, quote
Yeah,
unquote?
those would be those deductions for like small business owners and things of that nature that give them more capital in order to invest in various ventures.
What percentage of the middle class is small business owners?
Probably a decent bit.
But is it the majority? No. Therefore, the majority of the middle class will actually see an increase in their taxes. So that's not being transparent and open and honest with the American people. But I guess.
Okay. Well, um, again, like I mentioned earlier, I believe that tariffs are solely, they'll generate money for the government, but ultimately that cost does get passed back down to consumers. So um, there is an affordability crisis at the moment, yeah, I feel like tariffs would only go to further exacerbate those problems. Uh,
He
but
did make a point, though, on how they eased up on some of the tariffs that he had installed, and then they brought them back though. Why would they bring them back? Specifically tariffs on China.
Do. I believe because there was a trade deficit that we were in due to these tariffs. So that could have been that. And then I don't know. I don't know. I'd have to look into the specifics of those tariffs, but I can't provide an answer for that at the moment.
Fair.
But all right. Oh, and then I guess we can talk real quick about the how how this will affect or how we think this debate performance will affect the future of or the election as a whole. I think this will give a small bump in the polls, probably nothing major. What I do feel like is probably going to be I really love the endorsement from Taylor Swift the other night, especially because on Trump's, what is it, like Truth Freedom or Freedom Social, whatever, posted some fake AI stuff about Taylor endorsing him. I love that she came out, made a stance, and I feel like now that we have the Swifties behind us, there's nothing that we can't do. So I
This guy.
I very much like the endorsement there. I feel like that will have probably a larger swing in the polls than the than the debate will, just because how large Taylor is. So good on her, and I was honestly surprised that she watched and as informed as she is. So kudos to Taylor Swift.
I mean, Taylor also endorsed Joe Biden, so I'm not particularly surprised by the endorsement. Do I think it'll sway the polls that much? No, because I feel like since Swifties already knew that she was for Biden, then they would automatically know that she's for Harris. I could be wrong on that, but um, yeah, I mean, as far as for the future, I think I don't think Kamala swayed the American voters enough to actually show who she is, because that was one of the biggest questions that people have. Who is she and what does she stand for? I don't feel like she is able to solidify what she actually stands for, and if she will go back on any of her stances, which she has flip-flopped on. Because of that, I don't think she's going to see a huge increase in the polls, because at the end of the day, Democrats are going to vote for her already, right? Who she needs to win the election is independent voters, and even the independent voters who were interviewed after the debate, they didn't feel swayed by anything that she said particularly. So, and obviously that's anecdotal experience from a small sample size, but even so, that's still representative typically of a larger group of people who want change. So, does she
Definitely.
represent that change? Not necessarily. So I don't think it's going to be that big of a sway in the polls, but she does need it. I will say that. And the Swifties thing may help a little bit for sure. But yeah, she needs it because the polls wasn't looking too hot before the debate. I will say that.
Yeah, the margin is definitely closed, and I think that's within even although Democrats will win the popular vote, that's not what we need for an election. So we do need those key swing states, which sucks ass. But yep, hopefully we'll see those increase to healthy margins where we will for sure win those states and secure the electorate. So you got
Whoever
any?
wins Pennsylvania wins the election. That's what it's looking like.
So in that case, maybe she should have stuck with what's that Jewish guy out of there, the one that she was gonna pick for VP.
Oh yeah.
I forget
The
his name. Is it Finkelstein or some shit? Some Jewish.
Finkelstein is crazy out. Finkelstein.
Nah,
But
because there's a historian called Finkelstein. That's why that
what's
didn't.
his last name? I feel like his
Oh,
first
it's
name is
Shapiro. I was gonna say it's
Shapiro. Yeah.
yeah.
I
It
didn't want to
was it
say Ben
was
Shapiro because I know that's
it
like the
was
Daily
one of
Wire
them.
guy, but I'm trying to think what his first name is.
One of
It's like
the
I know his last name was Shapiro, but I was like, what's the dude's first name? I'm like, it's
he was
not Ben. What the frick?
he was one of
Yeah.
those prominent Jews. It was Finkel because yeah, in my debate spaces I've seen like Finkelstein. He debates a lot of Israel, so I was like, it's either Finkelstein or Shapiro. But all right, cool. Any closing comments? Anything else you want to add?
Not necessarily, man. I just do you think we're getting another debate? That's the last question I have.
I know Harris's campaign was all for it. They were like, "Hey, let's get number two going." So, well, I guess we'll see if Trump's down to play ball. I think after how this went, probably not. For
Yeah, I would like to see a different debate on a different network for sure, but yeah, time will tell.
sure. Well, thank you for voicing your concerns, opinions, and being moderately educated. Thank you guys for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And until next time, ciao.